All right, all right, all right. Good evening, everyone. How are we tonight? Can everybody hear me? Do I sound loud and clear this evening? How's it going, Evan? Good evening, Tristan. Let's see what we have tonight. Let's start with this today. So it's going to be an interesting evening because despite my better judgment, I continue to use Twitter because as a content creator, you kind of don't have a choice. A not insignificant amount of interaction applies to Twitter. This is a problem because something about having 240 characters or whatever the hell it is now really gets people, what's the word I'm looking for? They makes them dumb, like in a unique way, but not necessarily though, because we'll see later tonight that the ability that the premium Twitter account has given you to write whatever the hell you want, as long as you want, has also not been good for Twitter. There's just something about it that makes everyone check their brain cells at the door. And like, it's been difficult for me this month. Very difficult because, well, let's kind of go back to let's go back. Let me grab something real quick. I'm not as well planned out today as I want to be, but I did a thing around the 7th. I think on the 7th actually. And I said a thing because I knew what was coming. I was up. I was awake. when the first reports of the Hamas attack started coming in. And it was early, it was around midnight here in Colorado. So we didn't really have a concrete understanding of the scope. But I've been on this rodeo for a while. I know how these things work usually. Hamas attacks with rockets, or they make a little raid, or what have you, and then Israel responds by killing a couple hundred Palestinians, and everyone says, "Wow, these guys are awful to one another." And there we have it. Uh, that's the 2 year cycle, right? And it's picked up a bit in the weeks and the years following. Like every 2 years, you get this happening. 2008 from 2006 onward, 2008, 2010, 2012, etc. Roughly, and then you sort of run around and come to 2022, where Gaza launches a massive air attack and Israel launches a huge number of airstrikes. And there we are. It's the thing. It's what they do. Um, But obviously, that's not what happened. Obviously, what happened was it was a significantly larger attack than anyone had ever anticipated. It was one of the largest losses of life Israel has ever suffered, and we knew when it started what it was about. Like, we knew this was kind of what's going to happen. And so as I went on throughout the day, and the scope of this became apparent, and I did a panel, and I prepped other panels, and I had a lot of shows happening all at once, and a lot of stuff happening all at once. So it was kind of a difficult week to come up with something to say, because we just know how this ends, right? I Oh, hello, President Sunday viewers, or those who stick. We know how this ends, and let me bring this up for you. October 17th. This takes forever to get through Twitter. Geez. October 11th. Here we go. Almost there. And almost immediately, people started losing their freaking minds, accusing people of being Hamas terrorists, uh, saying weird things. Um, but here is what we go ahead and say. This is something I wrote around the middle of the afternoon, October 7th. Regardless of what happens in the next few days, understand that this war between Israel and Hamas will not remain so. That's happened. The last time the fighting expanded. We have fighting happening now in a limited fashion in Lebanon and Yemen. It was a nightmare for everyone involved. The last 24 hours have been a nightmare already. I feel for the plight of the Palestinians. Were they just a people abandoned, that would be bad enough. They are people who have been used. They've been used by their Arab neighbors, Hamas and Israel. They are perpetual pawns in this unending power struggle. Freedom from Palestine means being free of Hamas just as readily as it means being free of Israel. And Israel, the bright shining beacon of hope for a faith long maligned, cannot be that sitting on the hill for the Jewish people until they stop visiting the horrors of their own history upon their neighbors. Make no mistake, whether this escalates or not, this conflict stands a better chance of consuming both, rather than being the salvation of anyone. And by and large, we now know this to be entirely true. The conflict has grown. It's become the most massive loss of life in the conflict between Palestine and Israel since 1948. It has we are looking at a minimum of 10,000 when you add up both Israeli and Gazans at this point. I don't care what people try to say about the Gazan Health Ministry. They understand what's happening. And here we sit talking about this all month long. And it's just, you have people who are saying that Hamas are freedom fighters. And they're, I sort of sit and I have a hard time with this phrase, because Hamas aren't freedom fighters. You know what Hamas is doing? They have taken the infrastructure of Gaza, and they are using it to shield their operations and to build a base from which to attack Israel from. And Israel, for their part, doesn't care. They don't care if their bombs hit Palestinians. They don't care if their bombs hit Hamas terrorists. They just care that bombs hit something. So what we've seen here in the last month is just short of half. And this was only a week or so ago. The report was just sort of half of the residential structures in Gaza. That's the entirety of the Gaza Strip. Not just Gaza City, but Gaza itself have been destroyed. The other thing that came out just a week ago is a report from our Defense Department here in the United States that say the vast majority of the bombs used by the Israeli Air Force in this campaign so far have been 1,000, 2,000, and 250-pound bombs. Everyone just joined us from President Sunday channel, so a lot of you are familiar with a couple days ago or about a week ago when he watched the tunnel fighting videos, and the tunnel fighter explained how when they were under bombardment, the bombs didn't touch them. They just laughed it off. They just absolutely laughed it off, because here's the thing. When you have bunker busting bombs, they can go through about 25 meters of earth, or maybe 9 to 10 meters of reinforced concrete. These tunnels are typically buried 30 to 40 meters under the ground when people do them. These are unbreachable by conventional bombs. Israel isn't dropping bombs to destroy tunnels. Unless they're all Luke Skywalker taking out the Death Star trench, it's simply not possible. Like, these tunnel entrances aren't that big. So here they sit, bombing the population of Gaza. Thousands of dead, most of them children, because the vast majority of the population of Gaza is children from the last time. We see people saying that, or conversely, they bring up Hamas and they say Israel is fighting our war, and this is another statement that's just drove me absolutely insane, because Israel isn't fighting our war. Hamas is a direct result of Israel's action. It's formed after the protests began in the First Intifada in the late 80s. And to say that the First Intifada is the sole reason for Hamas's existence would be reductive, but it's also a significant factor, right? We protests erupt, right? The First Intifada begins when an Israeli IDF vehicle gets into a car accident and 4 Palestinians are killed. And protests break out. And these protests do, for their part, get a little violent. There's some rock throwing and some arson, you know. In some American cities, they'd call that a Saturday after a sports team win. Israel deployed tens of thousands of troops of live ammunition to the West Bank in Gaza, and they shot people. And this expands the violence in the protests because, as it turns out, people object to being shot. So this goes on for several years, but very early on, Hamas forms, and they are unarguably a terrorist organization. They want to use violence to enact political change. But they're also a direct consequence of Israel's actions. There is no Hamas without Israel. There's no Hamas without the Israeli actions towards the Palestinians in the West Bank and Gaza. This isn't saying anti-Semitism. This is a simple fact. Causality. So here we are. I want to bring up something from a couple days ago, and you might have seen this because I spoke about it. Oh, wrong one. I spoke about it on Sunday's Discord. Here's Keffels. Keffels is making the point that Palestine, country that we do not recognize but exists nominally anyway, with a government that's effectively been neutered by Israeli occupation. She's pointing out that Palestine did not do these things. They did not do proportionally to Gaza what is being done to them now. And Aristocracy replies to her. And here, Aristocracy is a YouTube or a Twitch streamer mostly, I believe, and she sometimes posts things to YouTube. And she holds herself up as an expert on Israel and Palestine. And to be perfectly honest, or to be perfectly clear, she is Jewish. And I have been watching some clips from her, and for someone who holds himself up as an expert in military history and Israel and Palestine, she does not know what she's talking about. So she talks about the necessity for Israel to be a mono-ethnic state, a Jewish mono-ethnic state, by talking about the Arab countries that surround Israel, and talking about their flags, most of which bear the colors of pan-Arab movements. And she says that these are mono-ethnic countries, such as Iraq. I would point out immediately, for those not familiar with Iraq, that there are three significant groups, cultural or ethnic groups in Iraq. There are the Kurds. You're fine, Bubba. Lay down. You just had food, and you just went potty. There are the Kurds, and the Kurds are up in the northern part of Iraq for the most part, and then you have the Sunnis and the Shias. And the Sunnis basically middle Iraq, and the Shias southern Iraq. This is not a mono-ethnic culture. There is deep ethnic and cultural divides in Iraq. There are deep ethnic and cultural divides in Afghanistan, in Egypt, in all of these countries that she's named. So she turns around and she says simply, they tried. And an individual here replies, Eris, no, that's Hamas. Palestine doesn't equal Hamas. You know better than this. And she replies, the IDF isn't Israel either. I agree Hamas is not Palestine. Okay, then why did you say it was? But for the sake of the comparison, it works. No, it doesn't. I am telling you, though, if they had the power, Hamas would slaughter every single Jew they could, just like they did on October 7th. Congratulations. At the third sentence, we have something that's probably true. Hamas would do that. However, they don't have the power. Now let's return to the first sentence. The IDF isn't Israel either. I have a problem with this statement for no other reason than the acronym IDF stands for Israeli Defense Forces. The IDF is founded functionally from the militias that had made up the Jewish individuals who were fighting the Arabs and the British in the British Mandate of Palestine. They become the IDF after the formation of Israel in 1948. The IDF is the Israeli military. To try to suggest that the IDF is not Israeli is one of the most absurd statements I think you could possibly make. This would be like saying that the American army is not representative of America. The American army is comprised of individuals who are either American citizens or foreign nationals who have obtained the ability to work and enlist in the American army. It is the instrument of America's military and foreign policy throughout much of, well, the entire planet. They are American flags on the uniforms. It's so very American that you are required, upon joining the American military, to swear an oath to uphold the Constitution of the United States. A country's military cannot be separated innately from the policies of that country. I will speak and defend to the ends of the earth if a country makes the best possible effort it can to avoid civilian casualties, to teach soldiers how to engage with civilians on the battlefield, to minimize losses. Excuse me a moment. I have to go stop a dog fight. Bubba. Bubba. Come here. I apologize. I'm back. I would defend to the death someone who wants to say that this is, who wants, or I would defend to the death the conduct of, for example, of American forces as it pertains to what they teach and what they try to do about war crimes. However, I will not, and I swear to God, never try to insult someone's intelligence by suggesting that the American military is not an aspect of America's policy. All right, Tristan, I'm going to kind of push back here a little bit. America has deployed a large number of largely defensive forces to the ground and several naval groups to the Middle East in case we get attacked. Probably a bit much. 2 carriers is a lot. I think it'd be a little much to say they hope for the fight. Um, so I want to talk about another thing today. I found this tweet because I know a lot of historians who talk about people who say silly things on Twitter, and they're great to have around. And I don't particularly care one way or the other about whether we like this person or not. They shouldn't please don't buy blue check marks. This tweet here is long, so I'm going to read it and then we're going to talk about a particular event, being what happened in the lead up to the American liberation of a death camp. And then we're going to kind of talk about why this is nonsense. So the tweet goes as such. The comparisons of Hamas to the Nazis is understandable. What people don't realize is that it's wholly inadequate. While the Nazis committed unspeakable atrocities in a wholesale manner, it's well documented that the SS troops doing this knew how deeply troubling it was, what they were doing. They binge-drinked as a coping mechanism, and they had rampant morale issues, but they did what they did. The SS... First of all, soldiers drink. To try to imply that the is a result of war crimes universally across the SS or the morale, it kind of leaves out a huge problem. The first thing is that the SS is largely 2 parts. There is the SS that is devoted as to the Einsatzgruppen or special action groups, and these are groups like or prison guards and whatnot, or the secret police type units. So here it is, like these are not necessarily military units of the SS, but they are principally the ones who are going behind the lines, running the death camps and the concentration camps. They make up the elements of the Gestapo. They are very much dedicated servants of Nazi Germany, but they're kind of paramilitary in name only. The second aspect of this is the Waffen-SS. And the Waffen-SS is military divisions arranged and equipped by the German Reich that are separate from the German army, or even the Navy or the Air Force. They are independent, supposed to be elite formations, usually weren't, but they were also prolific committers of war crimes. So to make a blanket statement of the SS morale and thinking that they had qualms about things is ahistorical at best. Hetman will go into endless tirades about SS massacres if I let them. Anyway, continuing with the tweet. The difference with Hamas is that they committed many similar atrocities, but they were gleeful about it. Calling their parents with pride about what they'd done, source required. For Hamas monsters, it was a moment of celebration. It was a moment of celebration for a lot of people because they've been kept locked in a cage, and suddenly someone knocked the cage over, so they all ran out. And don't forget the Gazans. There are many innocents in that population, but that didn't stop many Gazan citizens who weren't members of Hamas from gleefully stomping on the naked body of a now dead German Jewish girl who had been taken from the music festival. Many of you cannot fathom these things because it's not something most Western minds can even relate with. Just remember what we're dealing with. That's an interesting phrase, given that you're talking about the Nazis, who are arguably Western minds. Even before Hamas fought with the PLO, these are the people who gladly sent their children to suicide vests to stop buses with the hope to take out parts of the little Satan Israeli Jews. The targets were almost never military. They wanted the soft targets for maximum impact. You're good regurgitation there. You have to understand that they've been taught since the earliest days of school and even earlier, this messaging is in their cartoons, that Jews drink the blood of Muslim children and all sorts of other nonsense. When you live in a society that has a sole source of information, you believe. Many of you have never been to Europe, but you know it's there. But what if it isn't? Do you really know? You take on faith. What? No, you don't take on faith that what you see know is true. Like, people don't think, I believe in Europe, and I stopped believing and Europe disappeared. Tinkerbell would be so proud. You've been taught these things. Well, kids have been taught since the beginning that Jews are evil and despise them and want to kill them, none of which is, of course, true, but that also explains the glee. Remember, Hamas has been in control since 2006. Half of Gaza is 15 or under, born under this rule and indoctrination. Hamas was elected in a controversial election in 2006 in Gaza, and they promptly abolished elections. If you take some time to talk with people privately who have come from Gaza, most of them hate Hamas. Some people even say it publicly, and these are incredibly brave people, because Hamas tends to kill people who speak out against them. Back in the 70s, Gaza was a total shithole. Back then, you wouldn't be surprised to see graffiti. But you might be surprised that much of it is Western images of Rambo and Arnold and such. Fast forward to the 90s, that's all gone. This with images of so-called martyrs. And so, why are we... again, this is stupid. This is not a pretty situation, but it's either cut the cancer out or let it fester and grow. You are advocating for the annihilation of a people, sir. You should be ashamed of yourself. This is a disgusting post. Remember, Israel is the little Satan. They've said that the U.S. is the big Satan, and don't for a moment think they won't bring such things here. No, they won't. They will not simply care. The United States is not the ones who has cut off the food and water to Gaza. We are awake to what you people are like. This is disgusting. I want to come back to this discussion here, that somehow Hamas is this is so fucking brain dead. It's like these kinds of people that are absolutely out of their bonking minds. Absolutely out of their minds. It's like he knows 7 historical events and just gleefully compares them to one another with all the energy and gleeful anticipation of someone who has gotten a lobotomy. I hesitate to even... The Holocaust is obviously a horrible event, but it also does not belong to the Jews alone. Queer people, Roma people, Eastern Europeans en masse, possibly almost as many as the Jewish people, were just slaughtered. But that's not the only time that massacres have happened. Rwanda in the 90s, people went from house to house, killing each other with machetes. The gas chambers were not installed to make killing easier. The gas chambers were designed so they could do it faster. The Einsatzgruppen that moved throughout Ukraine as the Soviet army rolled through during Operation Barbarossa, that killed Eastern Europeans, that killed Jews, that wiped them out nearly to the man throughout Ukraine. Man, woman, and child. They would get trucks, and they'd take the exhaust of the truck, right? And they'd run the exhaust back into the back cabin. And And they'd put the people they wanted to murder in the back cabin of the truck, separated from the driver's cabin. And they'd drive around until the carbon monoxide filled the cabin and suffocated the people inside. This wasn't about people would like had a problem with being cruel. On a certain level, the cruelty was the point. Various death camps, the concentration camps existed throughout Germany in the Holocaust, and these were divided roughly into like labor camps and work camps and death camps, places where you were sent to be exterminated immediately, or places where you were sent to be used as slave labor in Reich factories. Uh, One of these camps, these death camps in particular, was Dachau. And Dachau was administered by the SS. It was a massive death camp. And in the closing days of the war, the American allies were the ones who were approaching Dachau. And they have a lot of stories about what happens at various camps as the Allies approach. Guards would often expend all their ammunition killing the inmates in the camps. Rather than using that ammunition to fight the Allies, they would eat one last desperate attempt to wipe out the people they hated. Make no mistake, trying to pretend that Hamas is somehow uniquely evil is such an absurd statement. This article I'm going to throw up in the chat for people who want to read it entirely. But in the closing days, as they approach. In the closing days, as they approach, the Americans approach Dachau. The SS guards, they take the vast majority of the prison. They take the vast majority of the prison, where thousands are dying, and they put them on a forced march to try to kill them before the Americans can get there. And close to 7,000 people die. It's a desperate last-ditch attempt to slaughter people. For their part, when the Americans arrived at Dachau, they were horrified by the conditions. And the SS make a fairly critical mistake once they get there. This would be talking about what I was. Thousands are dying. The SS opened fire on the Americans. And again, as I stated before, people tend to take exception to being shot at. So Patton's army goes a little nutty and kills about 40 SS officers, which may or may not, accounts are unclear, have been a war crime. We talked earlier this year in January, while we were talking about the various genocides that have composed the corpus of study of that topic, or ethnic cleansings, and the line between those things. I want to make something perfectly clear. We have talked extensively. We have talked extensively on about this. I have spoken with active duty American officers who obviously can't speak out because of the rules around this, but they have privately indicated incredible discomfort with the Israeli air campaign. I've seen other military historians on Twitter suggest that Israel is fudging the criteria required to make a bombing action legal. Particularly, they are overstating the military efficacy of their actions, and they are overstating the proportionality of it. We talked last week with Commander McMillan about this, and both I, and Hetman came out and publicly said that we were uncomfortable with this, that this constituted a war crime. After the show closed down, Commander McMillan expressed a regret that I hadn't given time for him to read the statements from the United Nations, which unequivocally call these war crimes. M.A. Rothman here is excusing it would be perhaps a breach of legality to call it a genocide, but he is certainly excusing an Israeli-led ethnic cleansing of Gaza. I am and we talked about this last time. I talked about this when I looked at the Wick panel with Brianna Wu and Wick and Stockdome Left and all those people. That Wick and Brianna Wu were going out of their way to excuse what's happening, to redirect this into tiny acts of anti-Semitism. And let us be clear, acts of anti-Semitism aren't great. But if you're sitting in a country like Germany or Canada or the United States and you see someone threatening someone because they're Jewish, call the police. But also let us be clear that there is no one, and I mean no one, who the Gazans can call, principally because they're out of electricity and cell service. But also, even if they had electricity and cell service, no one is going to come for them. No one will come for them. No one will come and help them. Every time people try to talk about Palestine, they get shouted down by idiots who are talking about how anti-Semitic it is to tear down posters. It has to stop. It has to stop. We have to recognize the problem at hand is no longer October 7th. The problem at hand isn't even tiny acts of anti-Semitism committed abroad. It's not even tiny acts of Islamophobia, because when these things happen, Arabs suffer too. Skis suffer because people confuse them for Muslims. A vast group of people are being marginalized right now, and because they don't have the massive apparatus that Israel has, no one is speaking for them. So let's go to someone who I need to pay more attention to. This is Brianna Wu, and most of you should know who she is by now because she's incredibly stupid. Brianna Wu posted this morning, I am dealing with a coordinated back-channel effort to hurt me professionally because I've acknowledged the obvious anti-Semitism and Hamas support from the fringe of my own side. I'm not entirely certain watching you tonight on Wick or the other day on Wick what side you're on, Brianna, but that's beside the point. I don't think this is about the people of Palestine, who I support and will continue to support. And she makes a few other posts, but she's protected her Twitter because everyone tells her what an asshole she is. But let's go up here. Doe, if you do not know, is an absolutely wonderful person. It goes by its pronouns, and I met it when Sunday did that 3-person debate against Wick, and I helped with some of the prep. Doe was a fantastic, intelligent, and friendly person who I don't understand why people keep saying terrible things about, including Brianna Wu, who says terrible things about Doe in those recently leaked text group chats, and then turns around and denies knowing who Doe is. which is adequately covered by Demon Mama in her stream on this entire topic, where she points out that Brianna was lying because she had a personal conversation with Demon Mama about this whole issue. Joe goes ahead and puts together a fairly concise and excellent summation of what has happened recently about Brianna Wu and why this isn't really a secret effort. They're just telling people what Brianna Wu has said, which is the only really effective way to really explain why no one likes her. Don't worry, Brianna. No one needs coordinated back channel efforts. Your own public efforts hurt you, your public dishonesty hurts you, your lack of research hurts you, and your narrativization without ever getting a good faith read of others who disagrees with you hurts you. Just this week, you shared what you called not a fringe right-wing poll with some of the most embarrassing polling questions I'd ever seen, polling questions that would make a middle schooler blush, and we're going to go into that. The poll was made by those who helped get the founder of Likud, which is the ruling party of Israel, and benefits immensely from their interactions and conflict with Hamas, elected. You didn't retract any of it, nor have you offered any sort of branches to those you saw behave those way and disliked it. Instead, you condescended to everyone else who verbalized their problems. These will be the qualities that destroy you. It takes no back channel efforts. How about the recent public panel between the closest binary trans friends of yours and Akanaboy, where you crashed the panel the old Akanaboy side over and over again, even though your closest binary trans friends were calling each other the F-slurs? That was the panel with Stardust where Brianna Wu was almost certainly drunk. Again, these will be the qualities that destroy you. It takes no back channel efforts. Ooh, or how about when you use back channels, group chats to try to gain information to use against me about my private life, and then in public acted like you had no idea who I was when you were outed for saying heinous things about me and others in group chats. Again, these will be the qualities that destroy you. They're all internal to you, and you will have the ability to change them, but it starts with you. No back channels are required. All that's required is you stop treating the people around you instrumentally as objects. To which I simply said, call an ambulance, but not for dough. So I think it's something that we have to understand is this discussion around Israel and Palestine is fraught. I feel like that's a stupid thing to say though, because we know it's fraught. This is a conflict that has been going on for close to 80 years now. We have to begin to look at this not in we have to begin to look at this in a less reductive way. There is a very, very real chance that Palestinians could be wiped out. They live precarious lives everywhere they are. In outside of the places like the West Bank and Gaza, they live in refugee camps, and some of them just look across the field to where their homes used to be. They are people that are dwindling, and I just I feel frustrated. I do, because I've been sitting throughout this month, and I've kind of dialed back how much work we're doing and how much content we're generating because of this. Because I am so frustrated with this, because like I talk about it and I feel physical anger build up in my extremities, and I've spent the better part of the year that I've been doing this listening to people, some of them lecturing me about American slavery and the indigenous expansion against indigenous peoples, the 400-year history, and speaking of genocides and talking about what needs to be done. And here we sit right now, functionally divided between two groups. One who is arguing for the murder of Jewish people, and the other that is simply standing by and arguing in favor of the annihilation of the Palestinians. And perhaps it's not everybody. And there are some who are trying to argue for moderation, like I have, but they're few and far in between. The vast majority of people just don't care. So it's frustrating to sit and be this wanting to see people not dying because this is a problem that you cannot solve with weapons. We know you cannot do that. But there sits in Israel a far-right government who thinks they will benefit from this. People are dying in Gaza right now, not because it's an operation to kill Hamas, which everyone with a fucking brainstem knows isn't how that works. We've done this for 20 years already. ISIS is just as strong as ever. They claimed credit for an attack in Saudi Arabia the other day. The Taliban has given refuge to Al-Qaeda, who we now sometimes work with. The world's a topsy-turvy place. So we know this isn't about Hamas. This is about murdering Gazans so that the far-right government of Israel can stay in power. This is the only problem that exists right now, and you need to stop talking about it like it is anything else. This is a horrifying thing. And if you sit and you wonder what kind of person you'd be during the Holocaust, during something like King Philip's War, or during at a slave auction, the person you'd be right now if you're not giving a full-throated call for an end to violence in Gaza, to stop Israel, is just another collaborator. But on the flip of that, on the flip of this, I see another conversation happening. We can probably go find it if I hit the home button and load up some tweets. And it's people who are saying we cannot vote for Joe Biden. And a lot of these people are people like Katie or Sean, who aren't Americans and don't vote here. And I don't know why they spend so much of their energy trying to tell us how to manage our old affairs. Or a related thing. This is pretty good too. Hey, boop boop. Hi, Keffels again. This is a tweet from 2021. Actually, looks like, if I know my dates correctly, right around the time that they did a rocket exchange and a bombing, where Bernie Sanders calls for a ceasefire. I don't know, like why everyone is getting paralyzed over a difference of terms between ceasefire, humanitarian pause, or what have you. They all accomplish the same thing, and it will probably be ignored by the other side. Like, why are we getting mad at politicians because they're using language? That's their job. Don't do this. Don't. Just whatever terms it takes, whatever form it takes, we need to get this to stop, because there are 2 million people. Well, there's actually significantly less now. There are 2 million minus about 8,000 to 10,000 people in Gaza. And they're dying. They don't have food. They don't have fuel. They are running out of medical supplies. People are getting hit with bombs. They're dying of infections. We need to stop what's happening. That's the most immediate thing. Am I dead? Okay. I think we're still working. YouTube is being weird. Is YouTube working? Okay. And the other conversation, and I need to bring up my Discord because I'm going to go read something I put somewhere else. The other conversation oh, there was also this nonsense. Palestinian isn't an ethnicity. Yes, it is. It absolutely is. Josiah, come get your boy. He's off the rails. Anyway, I've been having some talks with other content creators about how to kind of approach this discussion about Biden and not voting for Biden. And everyone seems to be fundamentally in agreement that this is a silly concept. Um Here, let me just read you kind of my thoughts on this. I'm not sure I'm willing to toss out the baby with the bathwater here. The vast majority of American voters tend to vote for what, and this is the important part, they perceive as a pragmatic choice. Not everyone is a far-right loon voting for Trump because they think he's going to own the libs. The vast majority of relatively reasonable people vote Democrat or Republican because they genuinely believe it's pragmatic. Successful national candidates target the middle. So if I want leftist values to become a driving force in American political life, the far right and the far left aren't nearly as valuable to me as making those values appear to be pragmatic common sense to the middle. You are not ever going to get Donald Trump or Mitch McConnell or Vivek Ramaswamy or Nikki Haley or what's his face, the stupid moron from Louisiana who just became Speaker of the House. You are not going to be given the time of day for anything that you want to see done if these people have power. Pressure Democrats to leftward, absolutely. We have to. But they are also the only reasonable and viable ticket we have to a better system that doesn't involve a whole lot of people dying. Because let me tell you something. I don't really take much stock in the concept of violent revolution. I have spent a grand proportion. How could I forget a name like Mike Johnson? Very fair. We're going to go over Project 2025 too in a different stream. I have spent the vast proportion of my time as a historian studying conflict, and that includes revolutions. Revolutions don't eat the rich. Like, everyone talks about the French Revolution. Like, oh yeah, King Louis and Marie Antoinette got their heads cut off. I'm like, yeah, okay. But the vast majority of people who the revolution killed, or the preceding wars killed, was well, the workers. The everyday people who were walking through the streets and getting their heads chopped off because they said or did something that made the Revolutionary Council sad. Yeah, actually, that's a good point. When you're going to have to basically inundate your representatives with demands for a ceasefire, for supplies. Tell the Navy to send UNSC Comfort or Mercy, that hospital ships out there. Uh, tell your representatives you want to see hospital ships head up to Gaza, park themselves off the coast so that people can be saved. Um, Revolutions don't save, they don't save your lives. They kill people. And they kill the people who are already suffering. So, you can call me an incrementalist and you can say I'm a dirty statist, and that's perhaps a valid thing to say about me. But here's the thing. Every other day I get up and early in the morning and I pack a bag and I roll out to a dialysis center. And in that dialysis center, I walk in, and I'm a fairly young kidney disease patient, but a whole lot of people are sitting in there who are older than me, a lot older than me, who have lived lives, who are sitting there. They desperately need services like Medicare and Medicaid and food stamps and things, and they're struggling because the world is unkind to those who are chronically ill. And we sit on machines for a couple hours, and your blood is sucked out, and it's put through a filter, and it's sucked back in over and over and over again, and you feel like hammered shit. And here's the thing. You want to know something? Particularly when I was in Chicago, the vast majority of those people who are in these dialysis centers are poor, they're people of color, they're people who are already marginalized because your health outcomes are worse if you're marginalized. You're more likely to have diabetes and other conditions that lead to kidney disease. And I think about that a lot when I hear people advocating for violent revolution. Because, like, we talk about these grand revolutions in history, and people's historical literacy isn't that great to begin with. And they talk about the French Revolution, and the American Revolution, and the Russian revolutions, and the end result of this is a whole lot of people who ostensibly the revolution is for are dead at the end. If we can avoid that at all, um, we should. Because I want to say another thing, and this is broad spectrum. I noticed an interesting thing when I started on dialysis is I saw dialysis clinics everywhere, in places they never had seemed to have been before. I noticed the thing properly for the first time because I needed the thing, and like they had been there all along. Um, because I had entered this cohort, this group, this tiny group of people who are just a tiny percent who need a thing. I noticed something, and I talk to people all the time who have this exact experience about so many things. Like they notice a service or a building or a business that they never saw before that was right there in the sight of day because they needed it. It's not anything like particularly profound, but we are blind to those things that we do not understand until we understand them a lot and to how they affect our world. So if I didn't see a dialysis clinic, imagine all the other things that because I don't understand them yet, I don't see them. So it behooves me to sit and listen about any issue, to understand it better so that I might advocate for better policy positions that are more encompassing and more inclusive. And it comes down to things about Israel and Palestine too. We've seen a lot of people talking about, oh, another mass shooting in America. Lovely. Anyway, uh, that's why I don't I think Americans are a lot more comfortable with October 7th is because we experience mass shootings so regularly that it's just become a speed bump. Wait, what happened? Oh, I'll find out later. Oh, there was this one too. This is the Israeli account here. Okay, hang on. Let me see if I can get it. There we go. No, stop. Okay, they're calling this a gun. I am 90% sure that's a police baton or a crutch. You guys have one of the largest intelligence agencies in the Middle East. You got to do better. You got to either that or I think you're deliberately incompetent at this point. That's the only possible explanation. It's all we can do at this point is try to look past this idiocy and have a real conversation. I don't think I will, Wick. So, I lied to you, Dropcar. I actually am going to do the thing a little bit tonight with Wick and Brianna Wu and Short Fat Otaku. Uh, but if you'd like to give me money, there's a link down in the description box to make it go away. That's fair. Anyone, really. I hate when this thing doesn't log me in properly. Probably because, okay, I just want to point something out about YouTube. I despise, I despise uh, how the particular options are arranged for the menu that lets you move between things like YouTube Studio and whatnot. Hey, Titan Uranus. How it's despised. So it's like your channel, YouTube, Switch account. Switch account is right there. And then sign out. I can't tell you how many times in like every week I go to Switch account to move between my personal account and the Two Guys account, and I accidentally log myself out. Then I have to sign myself back in on my personal account, sign myself back in on my Two Guys account, and then reconnect everything that Two Guys has to be hooked up to make it work properly. Oh, it's absolutely horrible. Anyway, where did I put my thing? Here we go. Proportionally, you're not doing well, Wick. You're only getting about a fifth of your subscribers and views. We get a third of ours. Suck it, Wick.
Hey, welcome, one and all.
I'm not going to make us do the same thing twice.
Like
I know
trans
we just came from
people,
Sunday.
they're non-binary and just want to make it up on the fly, right? So I think,
Let's
or
look at
as soon as I have a
random stuff and
child, I've
listen.
noticed that my job is very eager to show me a door, right? This is a set of problems that we've certainly not solved and we're nowhere near solving. What I think has happened is I think online is a trap, particularly for people. And I want to be really clear. I fell into this trap. I look back at my own congressional run, and I think if I understood the things I do today, I think I would have had a much better shot of winning. Because what I can look back and say,
no, you don't. You had no shot of winning. Let's be perfectly clear. You got 23%. You couldn't even get a quarter of a district of residents in Massachusetts, a fairly liberal stronghold, to like you.
See really clearly was online was pushing me to take this leftmost view on literally everything, sex work, not accepting, money from XYZ, and really focusing on the superficial when what I needed to be doing was spending a lot more time in my district and talking about the policies like directly affecting their lives.
Okay, here's a thing that Brianna Wu does, and we're going to spend some time on this now. Over the next couple of weeks, because this is getting stupid. Brianna Wu likes to talk about policy as if it is a religious experience. We must worship at the altar of policy. Policy is what people want. Come, my son, have the body of Christ. I cannot remember a single time that I've seen Brianna Wu advocate for a policy. Policy is a thing that a government can do. You say, I want to change this thing. I want less kids to be truant from school. I am going to, in order to do that, put cages around the school that rise up during the school day to keep the children inside. We will pay for this by raising taxes on clam shuckers. In order to see if this policy is working, we will see how many kids we catch in our cage before we bring it down every day. We hope to reduce truancy by 30 to 40%. Do you know what I just did? I just described to you a policy. It's an asinine policy, don't get me wrong, but it's a policy. It has measurable goals. It describes to you how we're going to get there. And it talks about what the objectives are. That's talking about policy. Sitting here and condescending to us about how you're such a great policy wonk while never, ever, ever doing anything remotely like what I just described is not talking about policy. You're just being an indulger in political onanism. How will I afford my third house if those taxes are raised? The clam shuckers. Diversify. Get into lobster.
And that's something I would do very differently today. Online, I think, is a trap because I think it gives people this feeling that they're making a change, and I think it's with the best of intention.
Online isn't a trap. Look at you people. You come from how many different communities? How many different cross communities have you built? How many times have you had the opportunity to donate money to someone in need because of the online communities we have built here? So, like, online is a very vital and vibrant space that you can use to begin to develop opportunities. But Brianna Wu doesn't engage in that, right? Because like she is too obsessed with her image. Like there are so many things I have seen over the past year people do for one another. Like the littlest things that you guys do make a difference to one another. When you buck somebody up when they're having a bad day, when you see somebody who's posting about something they're sad about and you tell them something nice about themselves. Like those things matter because I can't stress this enough. Everything is political. All like who you love, what you do, all things are political. We only really point out that something is political when we don't like the person on the other end of the observation. All politics is identity politics. All the things you do to make each other better, to teach each other, to share sources. Like I posted that I started reading Capital, and people came to me with things to help me understand it better. We do things all the time in our communities that are really important for one another. It's not a trap. Like the littlest things you do matter. And please don't let anyone ever tell you that what you're doing doesn't matter because it's online, that your friendships don't matter because they're online. Okay? It's really, really vital that we all come together and understand this. Like these things matter to one another. We matter to one another. Just skip ahead. Let's go farther ahead and see if there's anything of value.
That got you?
I have no idea.
Well, I'm just glad you're back, and we were wondering if finally the leftist mob had come for you, right? Like that this was your time, and we were going to be.
The infinite left is here. Run.
Like hearing news reports or something of suddenly Sunday found your location and his mob descended upon you. I don't know, right? But
We have a mob now, guys, apparently. Wick, get a life. Fix your teeth. You're just becoming more insufferable by the day.
Yeah, Wick, I've heard that you've had a beef with President Sunday recently.
Yes.
What's that all about?
He made some he keeps making shit up and going after people. He told Aristocracy that she needed to calm down after October.
Aristocracy needed to calm down after October 7th. Let's be clear. I see plenty of people acknowledge that.
7th and made some very
Yeah,
very
brutal.
untoward comments. I called him out on that, and here we.
No, you didn't. You ran around trying to pretend that Aristocracy was in the right because she took a tweet that someone else posted and said, how do you think I feel as a Jewish woman that these people are driving around in a truck with Palestine flags? Okay. Let's it's not even that the truck drove past Aristocracy. It's that she saw a tweet of a truck in Canada where people were driving around with Palestine flags out of it. Not Hamas, Palestine. And so a fairly sedate reaction, and I remind you that this nonsense happened today. That someone goes, wait a second. This is a truck. It's nowhere near you. You didn't see it. They didn't confront you. These people are tangential to you. They might as well be AI generated for all it's affected your life personally, and you are connecting them to a terrorist attack, despite the fact that they are using iconography. Like I point out to you at the beginning of this, like everyone's talking like, oh yeah, the only thing they could be doing is cheering on Hamas, and that's not the case. I point out to you the tweets that I read to you at the beginning of this stream, where I talked about Hamas being a terrorist group, but I also talked about Israel attacking Hamas, even though it hadn't happened yet, because I knew it was going to happen. Because we've done this rodeo every 2 years. I could like absent someone specifically saying that they're cheering on those attacks, to make those assumptions without any kind of proof or verification that Palestine equals Hamas, which she is explicitly doing right the fuck here, a month later, is a teensy bit racist. It's a teensy bit racist, Wick. And I gotta say, I think you're being a giant racist when you continuously trying to run these things over. He's not making anything up. And like we were going to go over, and we might do it again because you seem to keep talking. We were going to go over the idiocy that was you and Jenny Matrix trying to run interference for Brianna Wu, which was hilariously undone when Brianna Wu drunkenly goes on Stardust panel and starts berating Econo Boy for not being a transmed.
We are.
Yep. There are some people, like, I will talk with pretty much anyone. You know, I'll talk with very far left people. I'll talk with very far right people. The people I won't talk with are the people who actually take it offline, right? So I'll never speak. Okay, I'll never speak to President Sunday. I'll never speak to Ethan Ralph. I'll never speak to Nick Fuentes. People who actually try to like get your stuff fucked up, I will never talk.
I honestly, though, I don't think you would have anything interesting to say. You thought that Karl Marx was writing about Israel when he wrote on the Jewish question a century before Israel existed.
To those people, because that's too far for me.
Well, I had a gentleman. This wasn't Sunday, to be clear. It was someone else. I know who it was. Recently, basically told me he's going to try to get my channel taken away. He got me a warning on Twitch the other day because I unfortunately forgot that one of my guests was banned from Twitch, and but they remembered, and so I took a ding from that. But yeah, there are people who will just sit on my shit, wait for me to break toss, and it is what it is, right?
Yep. Same.
You mean like that time you accepted $1,000? I think it was $1,000. I have to actually check. Somebody knows about it. $1,000 to host political debates in direct violation of the TOS of Twitch. Like, that's another thing. Brianna Wu is supposedly a high-power PAC director. By the way, they've spent, like, I think less than $300,000 on 2 election cycles they've been in existence so far. So, like that's not even peanuts in American... Like 14... I checked today, actually. I was looking over some numbers, conversely, for another thing about American election spending, because, by the way, American election spending is out of control. Like, the amount of money we spend on elections could feed countries. That's absurd. $14.7 billion was spent on the American presidential election alone in 2020. In 2020, you have hundreds of congressional elections national, thousands of elections countrywide. There was an election here in town where I live just this week. The Republican running for a town council, or at least one of them, raised $100,000 for a town city council election. I want to be clear. I'm not going to go into where I live exactly in Colorado, but it's a fairly large town in northern Colorado. This person raised, through PACs and direct donations, about $1 $1 per citizen in the town. And buys these big ass signs. And I've been living here for about 2 years now. I lived about a year in another town here, but 2 years now. And I buys these big ass signs, sticks them up in the road, and it's kind of half ranch, half suburban here. So you have these weird stretches where there's like nothing, and then you have like strip malls, and then nothing, and then ranch, and then nothing, and then giant pile of cow shit, and giant signs all over the place. Do I live under the Denver airport? No, well, that's actually where the money came from, is Denver. But this guy actually lost $100,000 on a municipal election, which probably isn't a record, but should be. Guy loses the election. I must confess, after seeing $100,000 of road signs for over a year, I was pretty sure he was going to win. To be clear, to the best of my knowledge, Sunday has never taken an action against anyone outside of things. What he has done is sought outside sources. For example, when he, absent any kind of identifying information, sought out clarification whether it would be appropriate to use a given title with a given degree while he was trying to establish not-so-erudite's abuse of her credentials. So this is just a blatant falsehood.
Yeah.
I mean, I think this is really a very serious problem where one of the things I have really found recently is I've really, really enjoyed spending more time reaching out and talking to people in the right wing, right? Like I debated.
That would be because you're actually a conservative, Brianna. Wait, what? I'm sorry.
John Doyle at the University of South Carolina just a couple of days ago. I did Tim Pool's show. Dev, I can only speak for myself, but I'm really enjoying speaking with you tonight, despite, our history of Gamergate. And I don't know when.
We're going to talk about Gamergate eventually. The chat is getting angry.
The chat's getting angry. We'll get to that. But before we do, we'll finish.
Let me just finish my point.
Yeah, go ahead.
What I was going to say is I don't know when we got so afraid to actually talk about ideas, right? It really feels like the left, our top answer for stuff nowadays is to just refuse to engage with anything that's unpleasant, right?
You mean when you blocked Doe today and then closed off your Twitter account because people were telling you were a moron? So they did have that spat with the professor in BC. Well, that's kind of different. And he explained that pretty clearly. And like he was a player, but not the principal architect of what was happening there. Like that's like more to the point, if you're a college professor and you are suggesting that students who hold a particular view should be shoved out of helicopters, you probably shouldn't be around students anymore. Yeah, that's the other thing. The left has been talking about ideas for years. Just no one talks about them with Brianna Wu. Being tagged in a thing.
And it's not... I understand that often there's some ideas that just are not worth responding to. Like I think we would want to take the like a policy proposal of the Holocaust in the United States seriously or give that airtime. But for a lot of the stuff we talk about, I think it's so...
we don't want to see the Holocaust in the United States. Brianna Wu, 2023.
Counterproductive the way we won't engage it on its merits. Just before the show, I was watching.
So let's all stand and let's stop right here. Let us take a quick poll, shall we? Poll. Will Wu provide an example of how a policy proposal isn't engaged with? Question mark. And it helps if I spell things correctly. Start poll. There we go. Let's give everyone a few moments to vote here. Oh, you who vote yes, the eternal optimist. We'll see what happens here. I was probably going to get the stream demonetized if we were monetized. Go ahead. Actually, while we're doing this real quick, subscribe to the stream. Like the stream. When you subscribe to the stream, it makes Avery happy. In fact, let's go real quick here and let's do a fun picture of Avery. Everyone likes puppies. Avery's learned a new trick. He's been learning from the cats, actually. Brandy new, fun, exciting trick while we vote on the poll. Here we go. This is Avery, the history puppy. Here he is. He has learned to balance himself precariously on the back of the couch. And sit there, and he lets him do the best of both worlds. He can look over at me, or he can look outside. Avery, the history puppy. Let us close the poll before we carry on. Unanimous. There will be no concrete policy examples tonight. Let us see. Will Brianna surprise us?
Ethan and Hassan debate, and Ethan really having some very salient points about why a one-state solution would not work for Israel, right? And Hassan would not engage with that in any honest way.
That sticks on the.
Why would a one-state solution not work for Israel? What were Ethan's points? Are there concrete examples? Everyone who voted no, you were correct.
The point that I wanted to bring up before you had your computer issues.
Sure.
First of all, your camera isn't up, so if I don't know if the computer's
Oh,
bad
apologize.
No, it's fine.
Yeah.
I just didn't know, you know. Let's talk about Ethan and Hassan, right? Because Dev made the point.
Must we?
We need to improve our areas of the internet by being honest ourselves. So that, and so my question on this,
I cringe at being told to be honest by a short fat otaku. I've seen your videos, man. They're awful. Like, you have a very serious delusions of adequacy problem.
Tack on this is, I don't know if we are going to be allowed to do that, right? And I think the way that Ethan Klein has been treated over his, what is this, the third, fourth discussion he's had with Hassan over all this, right? To see the vitriol my timeline has put on Ethan for simply being upset that a bunch of people, like, for having pretty normie takes, right? You can say they're wrong or whatever, but he's just being honest. Like, you can't say that this guy's lying about this. He's being honest. And to see the way that he is just being excoriated, that he is losing respect, viewership, etc., to be being raked over the coals. He was forced to apologize, right, to someone who had offended him. Like, it's wild to me, and I don't see it getting better. I think this is kind of, at least for the foreseeable future, the new norm. You are not allowed to be honest, because if you are, that platform or that space you have.
Wick. You held a whole ass show in which you said that you had verified all these things about the Brianna Wu leaks, and then you had on a guest who made up a whole bunch of lies, all of which can be pretty easily debunked. And you're here talking about honesty. You are not an honest actor. You aren't. You have consistently engaged in horrible, like okay. You sat and let's actually see if I can find it. Here, let's go talk about this more Twitter shit. This goes into the theme for the evening. Let's see if I can find it without going through all of my notifications. I interacted with Mr. Hanley on this topic. Unfortunately, all of us mill Twitter people post like way too goddamn much. Oh, he actually has been quiet for the last couple of days. He's probably just as exasperated as I am. I should have bookmarked it when I know. Oh yeah, he talked about the stupid poll too. But we're gonna do a whole episode on the poll. There's the carpet bombing nonsense. Here, I think we're almost there. Found it. Bookmark. And then I quote tweeted it, so let's bookmark that so I can get to it, because he has in that our thing. So let's go to bookmarks and then down to this one. Okay. So this is an individual who I've come to interact with a bit on Twitter, who is a very similar background to mine. So we talk about this a little bit in detail. But he is talking to, again, this is the one where Wick is trying to argue a Sunday about the Israeli bombing campaign in Gaza. And he's misrepresenting the article in question. Israel will never admit that it's indiscriminately bombing civilians. True. The Israeli far right would happily do that, but Bibi is smarter than that and knows that international support is important. Their airstrikes are indiscriminate and their justifications are very weak. So, indiscriminate bombing is kind of a very specific charge. And as he notes, when I... to get a note how John Kirby described it. The National Security Director John Kirby says, "We have seen some indications that there are efforts being applied in certain situations to minimize parentheses civilian casualties, but I don't want to overstate that." That is a deeply disturbing comment to be made by a National Security Council member of the United States. Like, we don't want to really overstate that Israel isn't killing everyone inside Gaza, because they kind of are, but maybe they once in a while try not to. Israeli officials will conduct strikes that kill hundreds, injure and displace thousands, and then claim to have been targeting a Hamas leader with no proof. For example, last week we talked about the bombing of a refugee camp twice, 2 days in a row, where Israel claimed they hit a Hamas leader. They have not provided any indication that there was actually a Hamas leader there, but there were an awful lot of Palestinian civilians. Human rights orgs' descriptions of the humanitarian situation in Gaza are apocalyptic at the moment. Israeli fire is evidently indiscriminate. You have to go out of your way to trust the extremely shaky justifications that lack proof. And even if you trust them, there's still very little regard for civilian life. Yes, like, why do you think a whole bunch of professionals in the field of military analysis and military like here's the thing. I think there's a legitimate case to be made for Biden to open up Gaza with our 2 carrier strike groups. Put a no-fly zone over Gaza and force Israel to open up supplies to Gaza again. Like, they're not going to do that, but I think there's a case for it. Like, there's a moral imperative there. We're starting to die. That's okay, we're almost done. When you claim that anything and everything can be used by Hamas as a justification to bomb it with large surface bombs, then your fire is indiscriminate in everything but name. No, it is indiscriminate. They destroyed a fourth of the buildings in Gaza. This resembles Mariupol or Grozny, a city in Ukraine. Well, I suppose it's still